On this episode of the show, I have with me Abhay Mitra. He is the CTO and co-founder at Nirvana Insurance. We're going to be talking about building AI in-house, and we're going to dive into what that really means and where there's a difference between AI native and adding AI onto existing products. We're also going to talk about that expertise. What does it take to actually build that AI native engineering team, and how do they deliver? What are some of the differences? And we're going to talk about some modeling and what happens when you're able to fine tune it for a specific industry, some of the advantages, and focusing on data as a core capability will be big. Abhay, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Before we start, please tell everyone, what does Nirvana Insurance do?
Certainly. So I'm Abhay, co-founder and CTO here at Nirvana Insurance. Before this, I was an early engineer at Rubrik, where I built a host of data security solutions, many of them using AI. And this was before Gen AI was all the rage. And just to step back, I've always been passionate about using software, AI, data, technology really to solve real world problems. And after seeing how outdated and inefficient the insurance industry was, I knew there was a huge opportunity here to make a difference. And at Nirvana, we picked, and this is very much part of our culture, we tend to pick the hardest problems. So when we looked at insurance, we looked at where is the most pain being felt and where is the most impact that you can have on your customers. And we landed on the US trucking market, which is part of the larger US commercial insurance market, which is under tremendous pressure right now. Insurance prices are through the roof. The macro, if you have been following the news, has been pretty challenging. And really, ever since COVID, there's been a lot of uncertainty in the market. Most recently with the tariffs, that's only added to it. And so what we try to do really is use a lot of data, a lot of AI, and make sure that we can go to these customers who are struggling, who are suffering a lot, and make commercial insurance faster for them, cheaper for them, and safer for not just our customers, but make the roads safer for everyone, who is out there on the roads, which is pretty much everyone, everyone here in the US.
Absolutely. All right. I appreciate that. And we're going to be talking about really the building AI native products. And I think, this has been covered, but I think from the insurance angle, I think this will be different. And I think we'll get some insights because a lot of people don't talk about the specifics of industry focused models. And actually, I'm going to start backwards first, because I think this is going to be maybe a good way for us to kind of dive in and kind of talk about that. When you look at the landscape of AI solutions, and obviously a lot of companies are trying to leverage existing work and they're trying to find ways to piece it in, there's a lot of, I guess, different views of what those solutions could be. And as you kind of focus on a very specific area, you mentioned insurance, trucking, obviously very narrow. When you look at modeling and you look at the models that will bring most value for a company like Nirvana, how narrow does that model look compared to what other people might view this as?
Right. So I think I look at this, and Nirvana looks at this from a very customer backwards perspective, right? So when you think about what you're trying to do for your customers, there are some things which are pretty straightforward. You could even argue that those are solved pretty well by foundation models that are out there. So think about a customer service use case. Every company in this world has a chatbot, has a call center that you can call in, you can get some information, you can get some things changed. And so those are problems that we actually prefer to use vendors because that's a solved problem, right? And it's better for us to really invest in things that are very domain specific, that need the data advantage that only a company that does a lot of detailed work in that domain has. And so we tend to kind of balance out our investments around, hey, what are areas, one, that will have the highest impact? So pick those. And out of those, are there ones which seem pretty familiar across companies, in which case you likely can build a solution pretty quickly using things that are out there, using learnings from other domains. And then you have areas that you mentioned, insurance as one of those, trucking as a further segmentation, or auto as a further segmentation. That's where, if you look out in the market, there's not too many companies building solutions that work in that space. And the reason for that, and I think you alluded to that a little bit, is just the data, right? To get good at these models. You just need to have the depth of data, the breadth of data. You need to have human experts who are able to annotate this data, who are able to create these eval sets that tell you like how good you are at the task that you are trying to automate. And that's where a lot of the expertise building has happened for us. What's also unique about us is we have been creating data systems before the arrival, or at least the viral spread of Gen AI. So as we started the company, and as we looked at what we were trying to do, which is give cheap insurance to people, make companies safer, we realized that the only way to really do it is to have a lot more data and a lot more usable data than every other insurance company. Because if you don't have that, you can have the best intentions, but you won't really able to make a difference in how your product operates, how that can help your customers. And a lot of that initial investment for us from a technology standpoint was really to create this pretty unique, and I don't think anyone in the insurance landscape has this today, but to create this really unique telematics data platform that can pull in data from lots of different sensor vendors that for customers were already using, make that really useful, harmonize different formats, frequencies, volumes of information into a usable data asset. And that is the underlying data asset that powers all of our AI models, which powers pricing, powers underwriting, permeates a lot of our operations, all the way from claims to better billing, less operational overhead for customers. And at the end of the day, results in real world impact for our customers across a lot of these different touch points that I mentioned: lower pricing, better claims processing, less operational overhead for our customers, and safer fleets through the AI coaching that we provide to them.
Absolutely. I guess when you look at the industry and you guys are trying to bring a different capability in terms of looking at all these different features that insurance company needs, how did you evaluate what you considered a core advantage versus a potential commodity solution, and what you decided to focus on within the product?
Right. It goes back to what we discussed earlier around what is it that is truly unique in your domain. And you can define the domain either narrowly or a little bit broadly. For us, we see opportunities along two axes. One is insurance. That's an area where across legacy carriers as well as technology providers, there is a pretty big gap in terms of what is possible and what we know is possible with the expertise that we've built and what is out there. And so that's an area where we are doubling down because there's this window of time where the solutions don't really exist. And if you build them, you can derive these differentiated experiences for your customers or insureds. Also, just fast track how quickly we can grow into new lines of businesses. So we want to use AI not only to create this depth in the product, but also to go 10x faster on how quickly can we serve 20 different industry segments versus the 2 or 3 years that it took us to get really good at tracking and to really build that depth. And I think it's an under discussed part of AI, which is that you can just move much faster with AI because you can distill all that domain expertise into a model that can then help you, take those steps which need a lot of intelligence. But now you have this advantage of distilling all that intelligence of the experts of the domain into this narrow model. And so that's an axis that we have really doubled down on. The second one is on the auto side. And so we started with trucking, but that's really to us was a proof of concept. Like I said, we picked the hardest problem in the market where the pain was clearest, but we look at a lot of different kinds of auto segments. So think of a last mile delivery network, or think of your DoorDash delivery driver or your Amazon van that is delivering. So we want to open ourselves up to a lot of different providers in the space who don't look similar to each other, but that's fundamentally what the data and the AI lets us do, is segment your customers into smaller cohorts and then being able to grade all of those customers when it comes to their safety profiles, their driver behaviors, and provide a lot of the pricing benefits that we provide to our customers.
Absolutely. I guess if you're going to go into that within the insurance industry, within the areas that you're operating. You mentioned trucking, now auto. What is it that AI does for a company like Nirvana Insurance that actually gives them that advantage? Obviously, you mentioned data. You can build narrow models. Are you particularly looking at an aspect within insurance that you're able to provide that leverage? Is there a specific area that differentiates your advantage over a traditional insurance company?
That's a great question. And let me cover this in two steps. Before I talk about the specifics, let me talk about why I think commercial insurance is a perfect industry for AI. To the extent that if you had to pick two industries, I think it would be one of those two. So, unlike personal insurance, which is where a lot of our own experiences are, because that's what we're dealing with on an individual basis, and by the way, that has also seen a lot more automation. The risks are relatively simple. The premiums are all said and done, somewhat cheap and still kind of manageable. Commercial insurance just deals with an order of magnitude more complexity, and for that reason, it has resisted automation for a really long time. Even something as simple as taking in an application, right, which you would think like it should be a form that you can fill out as you do for your personal car insurance doesn't really exist. And the reason for that is when you zoom in, your customers just don't look like each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could call 100 customers up and all of them might be trucking fleets, but when you go to their offices and talk to them, they're just running so different kinds of businesses that you're dealing with heaps of documents, all very specialized. 30 will give you something else. For 10, you need the specific information that is captured in a government database somewhere else. And that is just the starting point, right? So you're dealing with just very complex information, and that makes your underwriting and pricing really complex. So you need specialists
Mm-hmm.
who have done this for 20 years for them to even understand when someone says what you would just consider random garbage. They can extract that out into, okay, I now have a better picture of like what this customer does, what their operations look like, and I can keep going all day. All day. It's really something that is spread across the insurance life cycle, across the different customer touch points. So now, as we look at not only AI, but where we can bring a lot of this telematics data to use and apply AI on top of it, we think of what are all the customer touch points that can be elevated at least 10 times if you bring all this power to bear. And we then kind of look at, and that's honestly a challenge, which is as a startup, you have to pick your investments because you cannot be doing 20 things equally well and in parallel. So what we do is, what are the 3, 4 things that people really care about that will make an impact? And as a specific example, we are heavily invested in bringing AI to our underwriting and pricing. And that's so that we can deliver on our promise of fair pricing for every customer who is out there. And I think it's something that was not that hard to, it's fairly simple to relate when you think of your own personal insurance. And if I ask you a question, are you paying the price that you think is fair for you? Does the price that you pay reflect the risk that you're taking, where you're driving, how good of a driver you are? Most of people will say no, and it's completely true. Now magnify this by 100x,
Mm-hmm.
because as a customer, as a business customer, you're just a lot more varied than everyone else. And second, the premiums you're paying are 10 to 15 times more than what you and I pay as part of our own, call it annual incomes, right? So that's where the problem gets really magnified, and that's where we have been able to go from a world where legacy insurance will look at a trucking company and they will put you in like, hey, there's a million trucking companies out there. You're one of them. I'll pay you, or you have to pay a premium which I charge everyone else. To defining really precise cohorts, and so these are as low as hundreds of thousands of fleets that look just like you, and within that we are able to grade you based on a lot of factors using a lot of advanced AI risk tools. Some of them are predictive models, some of them are generative, to create the features that we want and give you a price that reflects what the fair price is. And there's two benefits to it. So on the one end, you have really safe people and safe customers who should unlock that money to put it back into their business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're doing everything right. There's much better use of that capital versus giving it to insurance, which is not a productive use of your capital. So we are able to unlock that for them. But on the other end, where you are not on that top end, there's a lot of coaching that we can provide. And that is another thing which AI magnifies, because previously you would have individuals who are experts. There's a limited supply of the good ones who can even do that job. And now you can take AI and really apply that in a way that's really consistent. It's very personalized and help them get to that median and then towards the top end of the market from a safety perspective, which eventually means that the roads are safer for everyone, which is the mission that everyone who works at Nirvana is driving towards. That you're doing all these small things, and in their own ways they're adding value. But what is that 10, 20-year goal? And that's really to make insurance a tool to make everyone safer in their businesses, make everyone safer in their personal lives. And I would go as far as saying that before AI, this was not even possible, because you just cannot bring that level of nuance and understanding of each individual business that is out there. But with the technology changes, that's a wave, that is almost perfectly timed for insurance, for commercial insurance, and for the kind of complex risks that we undertake.
So I guess as you've kind of spoken about the competitive advantage within the insurance industry, it's a big shift. You guys are obviously making some headway. When it comes to your engineering org, and obviously AI is a cornerstone, you guys are building industry specific models, giving you all the advantages. When it comes to your engineering org, let's say you're not an AI native company, so you might have a different perspective from a CTO perspective, from an engineering leader perspective. What does your engineering team look like? What's the difference compared to another SaaS product that maybe has AI bolted on, as we would say?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's something that I think about every day, because the world is changing so fast that even though we might have started in a different place that let us do this too well, or better than everyone else, you can get left behind. And if you miss a wave, suddenly you're a year or you're 2 years behind where a new entrant might start. So that's something I do spend a lot of time on. I like to say that we are a data first company, right? And notice that I'm not saying AI first, because while that's the shiny stuff these days, it's the relatively less glamorous part about getting quality data in that makes a difference. And that's where, as an engineering leader, and as I talk to other people who are building, in similar spaces or bringing in AI, the advice that I'm giving to them is think of data as its own investment, and AI as something that leverages a lot of the data that you've been able to put together. And there's two parts to it. One is in your engineering systems that you're building, what's the quality of data, what's the quality of versioning, what's the quality of auditing, the changes that have happened in the data that you're recording and are able to put to good use. The second part, which is pretty new in this LLM and reasoning model paradigm, is getting annotations from experts. I cannot overemphasize how important that is. And as you get into the day-to-day and as you're building these technologies, you might find that hey, a lot of these things are now possible. But the key question is, how good are they? How reliable are they? Anyone today can give a really good demo in just about every field, any feature that you can imagine. But when it comes to, is this production ready? Can it go into something, as important as insurance, which is also regulated? The key question becomes, is it good enough? Is it reliable enough to put into, a system that either is completely automatic or something that can have humans in the loop to make sure that even if your AI is 95% reliable, your humans can augment it to make sure that from a customer experience or the end-to-end customer perspective, you're not making mistakes or you're not doing something that you would not have done without the AI. So data on both sides, your engineering systems, which previously did not have to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And second, your data sets that you would use for your evals, that you would use for your fine-tuning, your training, is equally important. And it's something people should be spending uh, 5x more time on today than 3 years ago, where these were not, not as big of a concern from an engineering standpoint. And it's a fundamental shift in how products were built before, how products will be built going forward.
Awesome. I guess as you've kind of walked us through, you know, some of the differences of how companies are approaching this, obviously, when you look at, and you mentioned data, obviously, without the data, you can't do this. What stops larger insurance companies from doing this? We would assume they have lots of data. They could invest in the tech. I suppose that's one thing if there's a limitation, but they have to have the data. Is it a case of having the data, not having the data, the case of the tech itself, the fact that you can move faster? What keeps them from, I guess, moving into a similar type of AI solution?
I love that question, because I think what you point to is really gets to the heart of what is important here and what is needed to unlock this, which is you can have heaps and heaps of data. And to your point, everyone's been collecting data for a long time, because even if you go back 10 years, you had this like data is the new oil, kind of phrase go around. Big data has been a thing for, at least it's been a phrase for 10 years, if not more. But the difference, and this is not something that was new today, and it kind of applies even for something like an analytics or data analytics that companies do, is how usable is data, how structured is the data, as well as does the data reflect the quality that you need to say, is your task sufficiently reliably automated? And that's an area where companies struggle, because one, and I'm sure like if you've spoken to anyone from legacy industries, the data sits in 20 different places, 50 different places, sometimes 100 different systems. And the key challenge then just becomes, can I correlate all this data to say, I can trace my customer journey. This is what happened at this time. These are the decisions that were taken. These were the engineering systems, which is where the engineering part becomes really relevant. Like, can I trace all of this back to what the humans did, what the customer did, what the systems did, if there was a AI model, for example, that might have led to a decision, and being able to use that well. I'll give you a simple example, right? So if you, let's say, have a logic to decide if you're a bank, and if you have a logic to decide who to give out a loan to, your logic will keep changing, your models will keep changing, say every year, sometimes even faster than that. But if you don't remember what the rules were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that decision itself, that, okay, this customer came to me 3 years ago, I declined them, is actually something that can be, kind of badly used. Because if you think about it, or if you're training a model today, you might look at that customer and say, hey, you know what? This customer was supposed to be declined, and I'll just decline them right away because I did that in the past. But if your core algorithm has changed, or if your model has changed, you might actually have a different view of that same customer today based on that old data of the time. But to do that, you need to remember all the data signals that you saw at the time. You need to be able to store all of the models that you had historically, what applied at what point. And that's a really hard engineering challenge. Like, it's something that even we haven't solved fully. And it's just, there's complexity in here, which most leaders, should be thinking a lot harder about than they have today.
I like that quite a bit. I think I've always wondered, as we are seeing startups with modern tech from the ground up, but lacking maybe as much data in some aspects, right? Maybe more valuable data in some aspects. And then you have legacy companies that have had an opportunity to collect data for 60, 70, 80 years, let's say if you're in the insurance space, but less than modern, or the less of ability to move quickly. I do think it's a very interesting race, as it were, to these solutions. Maybe last question, just out of curiosity, when you're looking at the industry, and obviously, you guys are providing a solution that has AI built in-house, and you have that as your core advantage. When you actually see it, and you guys talk to customers, how do they see that versus the bigger insurance brands, right? Like the brands that everyone knows about, that everyone's heard about for 50 years. When you guys have that conversation, what does that sound like from your side?
Right, that's a great question. And I think this goes back to solving real world problems for customers. And this is an experience I've had at TrueBreak as well, where we were not the sexiest product that's out there. But what really made the difference was understanding where the pain points are and solving those pain points. And I'll be pretty crude here, right? Like if you take a customer standpoint, they don't really care that you're using fancy AI or reasoning models or LLMs. What they care about is last year this thing was difficult for me, and today magically this thing is less difficult. Or I was not able to coach my drivers because I only have, like, I'm the owner. I have 50 trucks. I have to do so many things, and one of them is coaching my drivers, and I just don't have the time in the day. I don't have the luxury of raising VC funds to have a lot of kind of people to solve the problem. And suddenly through AI, and again, the AI part is somewhat irrelevant to them. What they care about is I have a company like Nirvana Insurance that lets me do these things which were just hard before. Or a customer who comes to us and says, I've never seen in my life my insurance premium go down. But when we go and say, like, hey, you know what? We have a new version of the model. We ran it for you, and we noticed that, like, what we did last year was not giving you as much credit as it should have, because our models were more rudimentary and we were not using the latest generation of AI. They are really happy because that means that they just got this money back that they can put in other parts of their business.
Yes.
And that's the exciting part, and that's the real world impact I was talking about. Like, I think AI is a detail for us internally of like how we accomplish these goals, how we deliver this value. But from a customer standpoint, they might care about AI just enough, but or they might have heard about it, but it's really their barometer is something easier for me? Can I do something that I was not able to do before? Is it cheaper for me? And that's what we are in the business of doing.
Fantastic, Abhay. I appreciate the time. I appreciate you coming on, giving us some great insights in terms of the impact of AI within the insurance space, specifically, obviously within trucking and now automotives. If somebody does want to ask you a follow-up question based on something you said on the show, what's a good way of connecting with you?
The easiest one is Twitter. So I'm on there at Abhay Mitra, so my first and last name. I don't post there a lot, but I'm on there more than I should be, or more than I'd like me to be. So if someone was to reach out, that's the best place.
Okay. We'll make sure to include that in the show notes. Again, thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Great chatting.
Absolutely. That's it for the episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think Abhay did a great job of telling us the differences, how an AI native company within the insurance space, specifically trucking and now automotives, operates a little bit differently, the core capabilities, fine-tuning and building their own models to be focused on the core attributes of the data that they want to highlight and some of those advantages from it. So fantastic episode. Share this hopefully with somebody else who might find it interesting and beneficial. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show is going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.